Hi, can we raise, stand and, for the flag salute, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Well, welcome to the April meeting of the Gloucester County Amateur Radio Club. Thanks to the Masonic Hall and the Varnishes and the Rusts for setting this up for us. I don't know when we're going to be back in the Pfeiffer Center again, but this is a good alternative for us. Are there any visitors on Zoom that are joining us that are not members or joining us for the first time? Anybody out there? Okay. Frank would have to let us know. I'm guessing none. Any new members on Zoom at their first meeting? Guessing no also. Any visitors in the room? No visitors in the room. Any new members in the room? Anyone that who's a member at your first meeting? Hand us up in the back. Can you tell us who you are, please? Okay, great. Well, welcome, Dan. Thanks for coming out. So a couple of announcements. I have one announcement that's really too bad. We got an email early this morning from Bob Heil saying he had a personal conflict and was not able to be with us tonight. So there was a significant email correspondence back and forth with the club leaders as to what we should do, and it ended up boiling down to either myself redoing a presentation that I'd done on Arduino and ham radio, or Carl playing his harmonica for a half an hour. It was a very close vote, and I lost. So I'll be doing the presentation on the Arduino that I've updated a little bit. But I did this about a year and a half ago. If you've already seen it, you're not interested, you really wanted to see Bob, feel free to pop out after the break, which will extend a little bit to, allow a little bit more time for people to chat. I won't be offended. Oh, he probably does, but you can go look at them. Ron is nodding, so yes. I mean, you certainly can go look at Bob's YouTube videos. So, and if in case the projector or something, Carl, did you bring the harmonica? I mean, because I understand you got Foggy Mountain Breakdown down really well. So, okay. Okay. 3 new members, Jacqueline Blanche, KD2JBY, James McCullough, who's an associate, and Bert Espanol, N3PKH. Are any of those people here tonight? Okay. Well, 3 new members is always a good thing. Member dues is the last time I'm going to bring it up. If you haven't paid your dues, you'll get an email shortly hereafter saying we're sorry to see you go. Hopefully everyone here has paid their dues. This is what's going on this month. I said March events. I didn't catch that. Obviously, I redo my stuff from previous months. So Monday night we had a TechNet MMS TV. It was really good. The TechNets are alternate Mondays on Zoom, and the website has the links. And if you're interested in some of these topics, you really should jump in. There's about a dozen of us that are on that net that are pretty regular, and they're really, really interesting. The fact that they're on Zoom means that you can participate from home. You can be playing around with stuff on your own computer. You can use a repeater for stuff. That's what we did on Monday. Then tonight, obviously, is the general membership meeting. Saturday is Tech Saturdays. Tech Saturday is always a Saturday after the general membership meeting. And following up on Len Rust's presentation on DMR last month, John Zaruba, K2ZA, is going to do a session on Yaesu System Fusion. So particularly if you have a Yaesu radio that works the digital modes, you may come out. And also, there's just I think he's going to talk about that also, right? So yeah, the whole package here. Thanks, Carl, for bringing that up. Also, there's just a lot of collaboration that happens on Tech Saturday. You know, the meeting gets over, people break into groups, people find out that other people are doing things. And there was a really interesting collaboration on the radio astronomy that came out of Tech Saturday a couple of months ago. So if you're around, come on out for it. Then the TechNet again on Monday the 17th will be MMSS TV. That's on Zoom. The 19th is a directors meeting that's held at the clubhouse. Anyone is welcome to come to the directors meeting. The 26th is dinner at the clubhouse. This is an informal, nobody's working. Just come on out and talk about ham radio and fool around with the stations and just meet with your buddies. And then May 1st, I announced, because it's before next month's meeting, is the next TechNet. And this is local operations with DMR that Lenny Rust, W2LJR, is going to do. Len did a technical session on Tech Saturday last time on how DMR works. And there were some questions about, so how do I make it work here? You know, what resources are here? You know, what can I connect to in this local area? And so that's what he's going to go over on that TechNet. And so if you're interested, go to the homepage of the website, the website at w2mmb.org, and you can find the Zoom information for that. Club nets are always the same. The RAG2 net on Tuesday, 10-meter net on Thursday nights, and the Skywarn net and the Aries nets on Sunday night. They're on 10 meters or they're on the repeater. Information on that is on the website. 1, 2, there we go. There is some interesting club news that I'm going to let Al talk about. No, I want to do club news first. Okay.
All right. Yep, it works. Well, we've made significant progress on our VHF tower replacement project. We have in our possession 2 towers, 2 crank-up towers that we got for a song. We got probably $60,000 worth of stuff for about $22,000, and it was just a shot in the dark type of thing. We were discussing the project, and we had gotten some. One of Rick WC2K had mentioned who's going to be climbing these 100-foot towers, 10 years from now. And as much as I would like to still be climbing, it made sense to go with a crank-up tower so that they can be lowered to 25 feet. It's a lot cheaper to buy a 25-foot man lift than it is to buy a 100-foot man lift. So I said, let me see what's on the internet and use towers. And literally the day before, somebody had put up the exact tower we were looking for. And then upon further talking with the guy, he had 2 towers that he was willing to sell at a really good price. So they arrived on Monday from Missouri. And there's, as everybody's seeing, yeah, we rented the telehandler from Y-Buy Rental and lift them off the trailer, and we got a very, very good deal on the shipping. As you can imagine, shipping prices are quite expensive. That's over 5,000 pounds of tower that total. So we have, not only do we get the towers, we got every single thing needed to put them up, except for pouring the concrete in the hole. We got, the base, the anchor bolts, everything except the concrete and some rebar. These are motorized. Yeah, these are motorized up and down. We did get, and we got a rotator in with the deal. You know, it was an excellent price on another. We got another green heron control box and another rotator. One of the towers has a complete work platform, walk around work platform. That accessory alone is probably like several $1,000s. And then on the other tower, we got a little, just a single little step platform that goes on that one. So that's our big surprise there. Now the tough part of getting the necessary paperwork into the township, you know, before we can dig the holes. And so that's all on that subject. Then while we had the machine out there, we needed to work on the electrical box out behind the trailer. And if you've been out there, I'm sure you noticed it was, you know, tilting forward like it was going to fall over. Well, once we got the poles, you can see there, we used the machine to pull the poles out of the ground. It certainly would never have fell over, but the poles were certainly rotting, you know, down near where they were down in the ground. So we have, I just bought the materials we need to put new 6x6 pressure treated posts in the ground with concrete. We'll be working on that this weekend. Yeah, there's we have the boxes. You have a jack. Frank has a kind of a pallet jack type of assembly to hold the thing up there. Now that there's no poles to hold it, but that was a must to get that box situated so that we can continue some wiring, you know, projects. What do we have next? The tower. Okay. And even more work was done on Monday. This was all done Monday. The unloading was done 8 o'clock in the morning. The guy showed up at 8 in the morning. So we did the, you know, we unloaded the towers. We pulled the old rotted posts out of the ground, and we did this fun up at 50 feet. That's me up there. We are cutting off the section of the tower that was folded over and lowering it to the ground. I think you have a movie there.
Yeah, this was the scariest part of it because he's up there cutting these posts on this tower that could have twisted or turned or anything like that. And our hope, you can see this this cable that's kind of coming out at the side. That was fastened onto the tower, and then the top tower section was connected by on a pulley, and that was connected over to the forklift, which we were using to create tension. And our hope was that when he cut the last piece of that, it would fall down, hang there, and then we could gradually bring the forklift in and lower it to the ground. So.
And luckily, that is what happened. Things went according to plan.
About 5 of us with our hearts beating at 100 beats a minute right about now. It wasn't just an hour.
Found many uses for that forklift.
You got a lot out of it.
So there it goes. Just the rope stretched, you know, a few feet,
Hanging right there.
and then rope stretched a few feet. Then we just drove the forklift towards the tower, lowered it down to the ground, and got it out of there. So we're planning on, at least, you know, for the time being, we will cut off any of the mangled metal up at the top and make a new top plate for it. and a rotator shelf, and we'll be able to use it as a roughly 50-foot tower until we can find possibly find a replacement, like 100-foot replacement for it. So we got a lot done out there.
We applied for the permit yet to put up the new tower.
Question was, have we applied for the permits yet? No, officially, our official statement is we're still planning things. Okay, and the reasons why we don't have an official plan in place, because we might have to talk about it publicly. Okay, and but sooner or later that will happen. The permits will go in, and then we'll be able to actually start construction. Okay, so that was it. A couple of other news items. What I've been wanting to do is kind of move news to be earlier in the session rather than getting into the business meeting, just to kind of get this stuff out of the way. Couple of hotspots are now down at the clubhouse. This is a result of Lenny's presentation at Tech Saturday last time when he was talking about hotspots. So I built one for Yaesu System Fusion, and Chris built one for DMR. So when if you come down to the clubhouse and you want to fool around with them, the frequencies are listed on them, at least on mine. We can label Chris's so you know what it is. And you can fool around with a digital hotspot. The other thing that was cool is that, as you probably know, Jim Wright sent out an email saying that there was going to be a visible space station pass the other night, and K2ZA with his HT was able to work it. So if you look, I don't have a pointer here, but this is K2ZA's radio, and he's seeing K2ZA there. That obviously came from someplace else, and where it came from was the space station. So he got a digit beat off the space station when it was overhead with his HT with a whip, which is pretty doggone good. A lot of people I heard tonight were able to hear it. They were able to hear the repeater. I don't think anyone worked the repeater, but you know, be aware of the fact that on 145.825 is an APRS station that if you got an APRS enabled talkie like these Yaesus, you can actually digit beat through the space station, which is pretty cool. Probably the easiest way to know when it's coming is Heavens Above website, which will tell you when there are upcoming passes of pretty much any satellite, but specifically the ISS. You have to put your latitude and longitude in. Don't forget to do it, or it'll show you when it crosses the equator. And the other thing is, if you're looking for the space station, it defaults to visible passes. And if you want to see it, you care about visible passes. But if you want to work it, you want every pass. So just remember to change that little checkbox that's there. Okay. I got a notice from the MS people that there is a walk in Cherry Hill on April the 23rd. It's the Challenge Grove in Challenge Grove Park. I know nothing about it other than what's here. But if you're interested in doing that, this is the email address to contact the guys. If you're interested, see me after, and I'll make sure you get a copy of this. But I don't know anything about this other than basically what you're seeing here. These are the same people who do the MS bike ride down in September. I also wanted to mention this. I think next meeting, I want to try to move, I'm not going to try, we're going to do it. I want to move the presentation before the business meeting. Okay, because most people, I think, are interested in the presentation and maybe not be as interested in the business meeting itself and the committee reports and the treasurer's report and all that kind of stuff. I know DBRA does that. So that's what we're going to do next month. That's why I'm kind of doing club announcements now before the business meeting actually starts. We'll have club announcements, and then we'll have the presentation, then we'll have a break, and then we'll do the business meeting thereafter, because there may be some people that aren't as interested in the big club business stuff as they are in the presentation. So we'll try that out next month and see how people like it. So that's the announcements. Now we'll get into the business meeting. The minutes of the previous meeting were in crosstalk, and they need to be approved. So can I have a motion to approve them? Chris, a motion, second. Tony, in favor, opposed? Okay, those meetings are approved. Treasurer's report now.
All right. Treasury report year to date for budgeted items. Total income of 5,795. And total expenses of 2,137, which leaves 3,658. We have a very good dues renewals. We initially there was quite a few people that had not renewed, but after a few reminders, we ended up with a pretty good renewal rate. Not too many people that did not renew. Thanks everybody for your dues and for your donations as well. Money in all bank accounts is 26,634. That takes into account the money that was spent on the new towers and the transport. That money was not part of the general fund. That was the grant money, which is being kept completely separate from the general funds. So even after spending the 22,000 for the towers, we still have 26,000 in the accounts. And that's all for treasurers.
That doesn't include, of course, the excavation and everything else like that. So we're not done with tower expenses, but we are done with the purchase of the tower and the transport of it. Committee reports. Oh, sorry. Did I hear someone say they moved to approve the treasurer's report? Somebody said that. Okay, Jim Clark, second. Chris, favor? Opposed? Nobody opposed. Okay, Clubhouse Committee, and you're looking at a wonderful picture of the clubhouse that Jim Wright and GCARC took, by the way.
Yeah, that is definitely an awesome picture, and the one on the website is similar to that, except a little not in the dark. Well, we did talk about most of the stuff that's going on. We're going to need some help with some weed whacking and mowing, close in around the trailer. I bought a big thing of Roundup. We're going to. It's easier just to kill all the stuff that's around the trailer, so that you don't have to, you don't hit the vinyl skirting and with a weed whacker and put holes in it. So, but still lots to do, lots coming up, and hope more people will come out and take advantage of the clubhouse. And that's it.
Okay, programs, Ron.
As you already know, tonight's program has changed radically. They're going to have to put up with John instead of Mr. Heil.
You got your harmonica?
Okay. Yeah, his message came in about 6:30 his time this morning. So the only thing I could do was share it with the board, and we made some decisions, and John lost, so he's got to do his program. Next month, May, Randy Smith, WU2S on the Arden Network, high-speed radio ham communication. And will also be very similar to what was supposed to take place tonight via Echo or Zoom. And so it should be a decent program. June 7th meeting is pizza night. There's no program. You're going to have to deal with each other. That's going to be hard, I know, but we can do it.
have pizza night in July.
It's up to Ron. Ron wants it.
Okay. That's a de facto decision then. Sorry, guys. You'll have to learn to eat pizza a month early. I don't know that it makes a big difference at all, quite frankly. Okay. July meeting right now is open. Initially, as a result of, I guess, a board discussion, I thought Tony was going to go and take up the whole evening talking about field day. However, in a conversation with him a little bit earlier, he says, no, I'm going to do an extensive report, but not the program for the evening. So right now, the July meeting is open. However, for the August meeting, Tony will be back and he'll do a radio mobile installation. And then in September, I'm anticipating it'll be Chuck Calabrese on propagation. And then if I can finish twisting his arm, Mr. Jim Wright may be on the clubhouse 160-meter antenna in October. And I haven't asked him that, so I don't want to put you on the spot, Jim. But what's your answer? Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Ron. Okay, contests, Tony.
Okay, I wonder if anyone got a chance to try the WPX phone from the clubhouse. Did you? Did you do it from the clubhouse?
Oh, from the clubhouse.
Yeah, I was just wondering. Yeah, so WPX was good. I didn't do very many hours, but I made a lot of contacts, and anybody that was able to do the full 36 hours must have made thousands, because there was tens of thousands of people on there calling CQ, and on most of them were DX stations. So everybody could work everyone. It was really pretty good. Propagation wasn't quite as good as it was in the DX contest, though. This month, we just had the Polish DX contest. I only got an hour in on that one, but they're going to do their RIDI on the 22nd, 23rd. That's all the Polish radio clubs. So if you're into RIDI, work some Polish clubs. April 8th and 9th, OKOM. Those are the Czech and Slovak republics, which were formerly one country, but they get together once a year to do a contest. And lots and lots of activity. CQMM is some Brazilian contest. If you like working South American stations, which there are tens of thousands of them, you will get the opportunity to do it and get points for it on the 15th and 16th in the CQMM contest. I mentioned the SPDX RIDI, and the last weekend of the month, the Florida QSO party, I consider that to be one of 3 state QSO parties that are worth doing, worth the effort. The other 2 are California and Pennsylvania. Florida has a lot of mobile stations that get on there and they go from county to county. It's a lot of fun trying to work the mobiles, see how many times you can work them in different counties. And the weird thing about Florida, no 80 meters is permitted. But normally that's strange, but this time I'd say don't worry about it, because the high bands are doing great. Just stay on 15 and 20 and 10. So that's it for contests. Do you want me to go right into field day? We've been hashing out some potential layouts for the antennas and the stations. And this first one here was the one I had come up with, trying to put the 80-meter station there, and then 15 meter, and then 40, and trying to make it fit, and you had overlap of the antennas. So Jim Wright came up with this improved layout, which I really like, where we move the 80 meter to the center with 40 flanking it and 15 flanking it on the other side. Try and line them up so that they're end to end. And we believe this will greatly reduce interstation interference. And the 20 meter phone will be down here in the corner, so they'll kind of be off to the side, and VHF will be up here. So we're liking this layout a lot. This is what I'm going to go with, unless I hear a lot of protests from anyone. I'd prefer you don't do it here tonight. Contact me by email. tell me what your concerns are. And the next field day committee meeting that we do, it's going to be on a Thursday night in May. I haven't picked out which Thursday. We're going to walk the site. We're going to get the lay of the land, and we're going to see how things are going to fit, and see if we can make this work with 5 or 6 stations in a really compact layout. And hopefully it'll work. That's all I have for now. More to come.
Hey, thanks, Tony. Technical committee, not too much other than the fact I spent a lot of time talking about Green Cube. Last time, the Green Cube satellite. At this point, we've got 38 countries worked, including a bunch of countries in the, well, let's see, we got a lot of Japanese stations. We got Korea and we got China. Interestingly enough, for Japan, they're at that end of the circle, and we're all the way at this end of the circle. You can't get much further east than New Jersey. Okay. And so all of a sudden, when Japan and New Jersey were in the same footprint of the satellite for probably only about 20 minutes or so, all of a sudden I was ready to X, because every Japanese station wanted to work New Jersey, because that's about as far distant as you can get. So it was really an interesting feeling for a W2MMD to be all of a sudden clobbered by a whole bunch of Japanese stations that wanted to work in New Jersey station. Also, I mentioned the Tech Zoom nets that earlier, first and third Mondays. They're on the website. They're really good. I mean, if you're interested in some technical stuff, just jump in. There's about a dozen of us that are usually there, and we're always interested in having more people. I'm not going to go over that yet. Education, Chris, things are well.
And then on Friday the 21st, we have our extras taking their tests.
Okay, so just for those of you on Zoom, 1 week of class left and then a week of testing after that. Is that correct? Okay.
Next session starts the week of May 1st.
Then the next session is the week of May 1st. You have registrants for that? Chris has already got about a half dozen registrants for that. So the classes are continuing. We're continuing to create new hams, and we're doing a great job for the ham community as well. Field day we've already done. Club nets. Does anyone have anything to comment on club nets? I know Bill Price had a note that he wanted to make on one of the nets. Bring my mic over.
Yeah, we were at the board meeting, and they were discussing different programs, and so I decided to start a trader's net for 2 meters. And I have a preamble which I'm going to send over to Jeff, and he'll probably have a sign-up sheet, and I'll do the first one, and we'll take turns, have a couple people rotate around, and just try to give some life to our energize that repeater that we have. And since we're doing Chris is doing a great job with education, we'll try to tie some of that into it, and just get this club a lot larger than what it is for membership. And that's pretty much all I have to say. So we will be operating a trader's net once we decide the board sits down, or Jeff or Chris sits down and decides what night we're going to do this. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Bill. Sure.
This week, the Tuesday noonday net, we had a lot of difficulty with an awful lot of noise on the repeater. It was affecting most of the people who were out to the northeast of the club. Steve and Jeff were affected primarily. The folks who were to the south and to the west did not seem to be affected by it. It was extremely noisy. I'm just asking if anybody can pay attention when you're using the repeater. Pay attention to the noise levels and where you are located at the time that the noise is affecting you. Maybe we can track down what may be involved in some of it.
Thanks, Chris. All right. What are we getting to? Foundation, there is really no news for the foundation. I do need to talk to you about something afterwards, though. We're getting donations that I have no idea where they're coming from, but we'll take the money. Jim. Yeah, given the fact that we haven't had any repeater stuff, I probably don't even have a page for it, but go ahead, Jim. I don't think there is, because we've gone through like 8 meetings with no repeater report. So I think I took it out of the slide deck. Okay. All right. Okay. All right.
Okay.
Go ahead and do the repeater report, because I don't think I have the slide for it.
And myself, Frank, Chris, and John, K2QA, took a trip out to Washington Township to see what was going on with the 220 repeater. And just like on 2 meters, some schlub probably tripped over the feed line going to our antenna and partially ripped it out of the bottom of the antenna. That's why, you could still, it worked sort of, you could, make a key up, but it wasn't working very well. So, I wasn't, I didn't have the tools to, redo the hardline connector with me. So I had to come down. Once we got down on the ground, we were able to, put the connector back on properly and took it up, and we checked the feed line with a dummy load on the feed line, and it did not look like it should. You check the SWR on a piece of feed line with a 50 ohm load on it, it should be just a flat line, and it was not a flat line. So there is about 50 feet of, I guess, RG213 that goes from the repeater up to about 1.25 inches hard line. That then goes all the way to the top, and then from that hard line, there's a piece of 1/2 inch hard line that goes from that hard line to the antenna. And we're thinking that the piece of RG213 is probably no good. So so we, I hooked it back up, but it certainly is not, I'm sure it's a lot better, but it isn't perfect. We're going to have to go back with some new pieces of feed line. Also, not in the not bad news category, the mount for the antenna is there's barely anything left of it. It's amazing. It's still, the thing is still standing. I have some pictures of it. I tried to take some measurements to see if we could, build a new mount for it. It's bolted onto a vent. The vent's about 2 feet in diameter. But, the mount has been up there for probably 30 or 40 years. So there's quite a bit of work that needs to be done with 220. But it is pretty annoying that other people that are, more than likely the cell phone guys that go up there, they don't watch their step, and even though the cable, I try to dress it so that it's, it's not like it's up in the air, going across, it's down on the, deck, but they managed to damage it. So, and we also are working on a plan to try to see what is going on 2 meters with the interference issue. We need to have an internet connection out to the Pittman Water Tower so that we can put a laptop out there with a dongle, an SDR dongle that is on the same receive line as the repeater, so that at any given moment you could go online and see what is going on, see what the receiver sees by using an SDR receiver, which may help us to try to figure out, what is going on. But we really need a lot of help with reports of, what time do you hear the interference? What's the weather like at the time? But we're pretty sure it is not the repeater itself that's bad. It's interference from somewhere else. Yeah. Yeah.
We were on top of the tower, put on the last antenna. So, but if you notice that sub was like welded right to the top of the water tower. And everything else was encompassed around the antenna, which was a lot higher. So the antenna is encapsulated with all the stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we put like a 5-foot piece of pipe, I think, on the 2-meter antenna to get it up a little bit. But the interference is more than likely it's coming from somewhere fairly close to the repeater, and it's fairly strong. I mean, it could be coming from some of the cell phone junk, but it's not a continuous thing. So it's very, very difficult to, if the interference was there and we could all run out with our direction finding, our fox hunting gear, then, we could possibly find the interference. But as usual, it comes and goes. And so we're aware of it, but yeah, Bill. Yeah, that cable was changed out. That's not the problem at this point, but Jim, did you have other questions or?
Can you
It
guys
should
hear
be
me?
considerably better, but I think once we get some new feed line in, it will be, really work really well. So
Al, can you hear me? It's Gary.
yes, Gary.
You said something about you needed a internet connection out there.
Yeah, we were looking at using Comcast, I guess, right?
Okay, well, I've got on the Bolt, I've got a Wi-Fi hotspot, which would allow an internet connection if I can get the car close enough to where you're hooked up. I've actually never been there. So if you let me know, we could try that first because that's free essentially.
Well, yeah, it's going to have to be something that stays there, permanently. The laptop's going to stay there at the site. So that we can get into it, whenever the interference happens, we can log in and see what's going on.
Okay. No, it won't work. I thought it just for, for a day of testing or whatever. Okay.
All right. Thanks.
Hey, Al? Al, can you hear me? It's Vinny, N4NY1.
Hang on a second, Jerry. Vinny, go ahead.
Assuming everything goes well with the erection of the new towers, the pouring the concrete, permits and all that, and we get them up. Has any thought ever been given to relocating the repeater to one of those really tall towers and being done with this mess over at the Pittman Water Tower? I've been with the club 14 years and we battled interference, neighbors that are in the tower themselves, whether it's, the cell phone systems. And it seems like an ongoing battle that just never ends. And I think the reason we were at this tower was because I guess we get free electric and the height of the tower and the location being centrally located. But at which point do we throw up our hands and say, hey, you know what? Maybe it's just time to move it and where we could have more reliability, more accessibility and less interference, either by the neighbors or by, the interference itself.
We talked about it. It wouldn't really be a great idea to put it at the club site. There's no guarantee that there wouldn't be interference there as well. The only plus would be you have access to it whenever you wanted. But what was the question, Jerry, you had?
Type interference as if it's coming in on the input. Or it
Yes.
is the head sounding signal on the output, and then particular reason, like you were saying, it was up north in my area.
It's coming in on the input frequency. It's, you know, it's just desensing. Usually you hear some crackling. So it's very difficult to, with an SDR hooked up, we'll be able to visually look at what's going on, you know, on what's coming down, you know, on the receiver. And we'll we'll be able to tell for sure whether the repeater is desensing itself, which it probably, I don't think it is.
Any kind of desensing was higher power device local to the units itself. We used to have problems with paging outputs that they were running 500 watts, and their filtering was really bad. It was a particular brand, and it's horrible. And the SEC knew about their filtering. They eventually went away with the advent of the internet,
Yeah.
modern day communications. I'm just curious if you have something that's leaky right at the tower along those lines adjacent to our frequency.
I don't think there's any paging on that tower, but
Can you investigate what other transmitters are up there?
it's pretty much just our stuff. There's Mike N2SRO knows what else is up there. The police actually have something on there. Like
It's a
I have no idea, but I don't want to tie up the whole meeting with, you know, we're aware of some issues, and we'll report back as we continue to look for answers here.
Okay. Constitution, Ron, anything to report?
trying to get the group together and discuss some of the changes that we've reviewed in the board of directors meeting. So that's to be scheduled.
Okay, so for the group's information, the board has gone through the Constitution in the last 2 or 3 meetings and made some changes to things that were either obsolete or where we wanted to make it a little easier for the club to function. And the bylaws will probably be the topic of the next directors meeting. And then, as Ron said, we're going to come up with a recommended set of changes to the Constitution, which hopefully will be the last set of changes once and for all. And they'll be run through the process of approvals by the general membership. And then hopefully things will be a little bit smoother in some ways. The welfare, old business, is there any old business? Carl, go ahead. John mentioned the 2 things. John mentioned that backing up a second, the foundation got a grant for the VHF equipment, which was 3 basic groups of equipment. One was the Flex 6400, which arrived a while ago. The other was a set of transverters, which arrived a while ago. And the third was the linear amplifiers, which John tells me arrived today. So everything. I'm sorry if we didn't make that clear. The equipment that was funded by the foundation's grant has come in. There are additional funds left from the foundation grant that we didn't spend, which we are allowed to spend for other things like relays and components and things like that, which we'll do once we get our heads above water in terms of all the other projects that are going on. But we now have all the major pieces of a phenomenal VHF station, courtesy of ARDC. Old business. There are several items of new business. These are really picayune issues that the Constitution requires any approval of any expenditures that exceed what the budget is. And that's why we're coming and asking for approval of potential $300 payment to the alarm company for something to do with the alarm. And I believe the payment for $95.40 is for an additional email address that's necessary. One of the changes we made to the Constitution, which hopefully will get approved, is to allow us, the board, at least some flexibility so we don't have to come to the membership for picky and little things like that. But unless there's any discussion on these, can I have a motion to approve these items? Okay, Tony, second. Bill, all in favor? Any opposed? All right, we're approved.
Price went up on the email addresses for the club. The price went up. That's all, but yeah, Constitution says we have to.
Yeah, so I think it was like $60 to $90. So we had to call you guys together to approve a $30 expenditure, which is pretty ridiculous. Okay, any other business? Tony, yes.
Successfully tried to find band pass filters to use on field day last year and the year before. Well, now Frank may have found me a source. Would it be appropriate to ask for an approval to potentially buy some band pass filters for field day use? We could use them over and over, year after year.
I don't see why it would not be appropriate.
$80 a piece. I think we probably need like $400 worth. And I don't know if we're going to be able to get them in time, but I just want to be able to, if Frank's source pans out, I want to be able to do it.
So Tony is asking for a motion to spend up to $400 on band pass builders to be used for field day. Is that correct? Well, Tony just made a motion. I'm
Five, just to be safe.
all right. So Tony, I understand you've now made a motion for $500 for band pass filters for field day. Do I now have your motion correct? All right. Is there a second to that motion? All right. Jim Clark had his hand up first. Any discussion on this? Nobody knows. Yes, somebody walked off with them. Okay. So John Hill has volunteered to chase down the people that took the filters, and that's going to be my standard response to somebody who says we need to. Because if you say we need to, that means I will. Okay. During the rest of this year, that's the way that comment will be interpreted. It will be in the Constitution. It will. Right. All right. So we have a motion. We have a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Any other, Frank?
Thanks, John. Want to talk a little bit about some of the work going on at the clubhouse and the need for some materials to support the work. As everyone is aware, earlier Al mentioned that while we had the equipment on hand, we removed the power posts that were rotten, that were holding up the breaker box and the meter base behind the clubhouse. So we're going to need some materials, which Al has already fronted the money for generously, to replace those poles. That's a couple of 6x6s, some concrete, some gravel. Incidentally, if anyone is available on Saturday, we would appreciate a little bit of help with digging the holes to the proper size for this. A couple of guys on hand switching off makes the job a lot easier. Apologies that it conflicts with Tech Saturday, but as mentioned, we had the equipment, we needed to use it. In addition, if anyone has a chainsaw and is willing to come out for an hour and cut up the old posts so that we could dispose of them, that would be greatly appreciated. Reach out to myself or Al. Getting back to materials, as mentioned, we need some posts, we need some lumber, concrete, gravel, and so on in order to complete that. Another project that's been ongoing is the renovation of the VHF room. I'm sure everyone has seen the progress pictures where the room was totally gutted, rewired, re-insulated, repaneled, new ceiling. And in general, the room's in pretty good shape. The next step that we spoke about last year that we'd like to begin on is custom furnishings for that room that will house the operating positions and the equipment that was purchased from the grant. To that end, we're looking for some supplies, plywood, countertop supplies, particle board for Mike, wood finish, and so on. To support these projects, I'd like to request a project allotment not to exceed $2,500. If anyone has any questions, or if I could get a motion on that, I would appreciate it.
Any discussion?
Frank's the one who's gonna be doing all the work of building the custom furniture for free, which is how a lot of stuff gets done around here. He just needs the materials to get it done.
Right. For those on Zoom, Al noted that Frank is doing all the work. I'll also note that a lot of personal funds have been expended on that room that I don't think, in fact, I don't think we've asked the club for anything that went into that room. So there's a motion, there's a second, is there discussion? Okay, I'll we'll reiterate the motion. The motion is request for up to $2,500 for materials to build out the VHF room. Is that correct? And cover the, right, and thank you for that. Cover the installation of the posts to support the electrical box. Carl, does that work for you? Okay, all right, moved and seconded. Discussion? All in favor? Okay, opposed? Okay, motion carried. All right. Carl.
I'm going to blame this on Jeff WW2ZBN. I was having a talk with him about another article we should having a crosstalk, like member spotlight, which Jeff said we had years ago, and I sort of volunteered to take it over. So what'll happen is that every month, one or two or three of you will get a questionnaire from me to make this work. It'll be questions like, how long you've been licensed? How did you get interested in amateur radio? What are your favorite aspects of amateur radio? Maybe a picture of you at your shack or at the clubhouse. Doing, no, we're not going to get anybody in trouble that way. So don't be shocked when you get it from me. I'll send it to a couple of people each month because not everybody is going to respond, and we'll see if we can rejuvenate the member spotlight thing. And I promise not to bring my accordion to the club meeting. I'm banned from doing that in North Jersey. So
Don't be so sure.
Regarding the tower, we mentioned something about needing permits.
We can't hear you.
All right, well then.
Yeah, Zoom guys can't hear.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, sorry about that. Stan WA2JRZ. John, if in case you need any assistance on the zoning permit, I'm a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey. So if you need anything, if there's a variance that's involved or any assistance in that regard, I'd be glad to provide that. And actually, if any of the members have any zoning issues with regards to towers or antennas or whatever in the future, pro bono, I'd be glad to provide some assistance.
I'll be talking to you. Okay. Anything else? All right, it is.
Hey, John?
about half past. I hear someone on Zoom.
Yeah, John.
Vinny, yes, Vinny.
Quick question. That shot of John Zaruba's HT, which is the same one I have. Does the club have their own fusion room or Wires X room by any chance?
I don't believe so. Is anyone, Frank?
There is not a fusion room on Wires X, but there is a YSF reflector, which is available on the YSF reflector directory. The name of the room is W2MMD Skunkworks. That is also cross-linked to a private DMR reflector. John ZA can elaborate a little bit further, and I'm sure he'll be speaking about this on his presentation Saturday.
Okay, yeah, the only reason I asked was because I got the hotspot, so you can use that radio, and the Americas net are just brutal, to listen to. It's all over the world. They call DX on it and CQ, and I figured, it'd be like I can take that hotspot in the car with me and connect it to my cell phone hotspot, and with an HT I could talk all over the place, but I just have no desire to talk to Japan on when I'm on the road. I'd rather talk to club members like it was a repeater. That's the only reason I mentioned it.
Okay.
Hey,
Thanks.
Frank, John, K2ZA.
Okay. And someone else?
Yeah,
John, go ahead.
K2ZA.
Yes, go ahead.
All right. Actually, there is a Wires X room that's connected. Basically, the repeater defaults to that if you don't connect anywhere else. I host a Wires X room. It's called K2ZA-room. So that's real original. But what Vinny's trying to do with a hotspot, there needs to be like a facility we have now where we've got Wires X and another type of hotspot connected over the same RF channel. That will work, but it won't get you into the Wires X system. You have to be at a place where they're shared. So short answer is Vinny can connect to the one we have set up, and he'll go out over the Glassboro repeater.
Okay.
I'll send you an email, John, because I got the same radio you have. You can do that with your radio?
It's not a radio question. It's more of a hotspot question, but yeah, it works.
Okay,
But yeah, get a hold of me and I'll walk you through it.
sounds good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. I've had these sitting in front of me for the last hour. Is Joe KE3AKT or Alex N5MG here? Because I have name tags for you. No, you're not here. Okay. All right. Anything else? All right. Carl got me this great gavel. So declare the meeting closed. We will take a 10-minute break and we'll start the session if you want to hang around for it, and in 10 minutes. So meeting is adjourned. All right. So this is a session I did several probably last year, and I'll try and swing through some of the older stuff. I did add some new materials to it today, but I had about 2 hours notice that I was going to be doing this. So I want to talk about some of the applications of an Arduino for ham radio, and this worked when I was standing over here. There it goes. Maybe I need to stand. Shit. Close the sharing window, and then you've got to share the screen again. All right. So there's a couple of different gadgets that are out here. Damn it. There. A couple of different gadgets we use that are little tiny computer type things. One's a Raspberry Pi and the other is an Arduino. And I think some people probably aren't familiar with the differences between them. An Arduino is basically a process controller. Okay. It takes inputs, it creates outputs, and it doesn't do much else. It doesn't have an operating system. It doesn't natively have Wi-Fi. It doesn't natively have Ethernet. All it does is take a bunch of inputs, do something with them, and put them out. Raspberry Pi is an actual little computer. Okay, and you can think of it that way. It has an operating system. It's got disk. It's got memory. It's got all sorts of things, and it looks like a computer, and it does different things. So this is a Raspberry Pi Uno. This is what this guy looks like. Excuse me, this is an Arduino Uno. This is a Raspberry Pi. Very different looking types of devices. This is on Arduino Nano. This is a tiny little thing about as big as your thumb. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of different types of Arduinos out there. This is an Arduino Mega. This is the other end of it. We use these for a lot of different things. So you can see on this, for example, you've got a power port here. You've got a USB port here. That's how you talk to the things. And then there's a whole bunch of here on the Mega. There's a whole bunch of analog ports. So they'll sense voltage and you can measure that voltage. So it's an analog port and it reports back an analog amount. These are digital ports, and these are input or output ports. So basically it's on or it's off, and it's either like sensing a button or lighting a light or flipping a relay or something like that. The Mega's got COM ports up here, TXRX, TXRX, TXRX. These are COM ports, and you can talk out them to some other device. So for example, if you wanted to talk to a USB device, you could hook these up to a TTL converter, hook it up to a USB to TTL converter, plug it into your computer, and all of a sudden you've got COM6 where you're talking back and forth to this Mega. So the reason we use the Megas a lot is because we like to do these things. There's a couple of applications that I'll show you where we're actually using those COM ports, and that's why we're using a Mega. Here's what they cost. Yeah, that's good. And this was today on Amazon. So your Arduino Uno, $28, the Mega, $48. About half the stuff we do is with these, about half the stuff we do is with these. Okay. And then there's other variations on it. This is a knockoff Arduino. It's not a regular Arduino, but it's a little bit cheaper. I've used them and I haven't noticed any difference with them. And then there's the Nanos, 4 for $21. The differences on these, if you order them, is if they're really, really cheap, they don't have the pin soldered on yet. Okay. So they'll give you the board and then they'll give you a separate pin set and you'll have to solder them on yourself. Okay. So depending on how your soldering skills are, if you're Chris, you're going to buy them like this because he can solder like bad. If you're me, you're going to buy them with a pin soldered on because I can't solder for a damn. Okay. But that's the difference in cost sometimes between those little things. But you know, 4 for $21, they're dirt cheap. You can do all sorts of things with them. There's a bunch of books out on ham radio projects and all sorts of things you can do with them, CW monitors and solar battery charge stuff and things like that. We use them for rotator control, which I'll show you, and we're using them for antenna switching. I think the more interesting stuff is not this stuff. It's coming up with your own interesting uses where nothing else will work at it, like station sequencing or something where you got to turn the transverter off before you turn the amplifier on, and you got to sense the push to talk coming out of the radio before you do this, before you do that, and then you'll do this, and then you'll do that, and you'll make sure that this is done before you turn the amplifier on. And that's the kind of thing that's really kind of fun to do with an Arduino. You program an Arduino on your computer and you download the code to the Arduino, which is different from what you would do on a Raspberry Pi or something where you're actually talking to the Pi and writing the program in the Pi. Here you're writing the program on your computer and you're downloading it into the Arduino through that USB port. They're written in C++, although I understand that there's a version that's out for MicroPython. If anyone's done that, be interested in talking to you because Arduino gets programmed in C, but the Raspberry Pi gets programmed in Python, and they're different and they're really confusing. And everything's, if you're working with both of these things, it's really confusing to try and switch back and forth between the two programming languages. The way that the program works is there's a program up here for setting up where you create all of your variables and stuff like that and your constants. And then this thing is just a loop. Remember, I said all it does is read, write, read, write, read, write. So what happens in this piece of code is, what do you want it to do? So go read the push button, sense the push button, take the sense of the push button and turn the light on. Then go back and read the push button again, then turn the light on, depending on whether the button is pushed or all the other complex steps you've got in here. Go read where the rotator program tells you to aim the antenna. Tell it to start moving. Is it at the right place yet? No, keep moving. Is it at the right place yet? No, keep moving. Is it at the right place yet? Yes, stop. That kind of stuff. So all of that is basically in a big loop there. So we've got 3 of these things going. We've got a rotator controller. We've got the satellite antenna switch, and I'm starting to fool around with a K3NG based controller because Frank told me I was a fool for writing all this code from scratch when somebody's already done all of it. So I'll show you some of that a little bit later on. Rotator controller is pretty basic. The PC sends the azimuth to go to. The controller knows where the antenna is now, so it's got to figure out which direction to turn. The controller will then energize the rotator to go clockwise or counterclockwise or up or down if it's elevation. It will then read the analog voltage coming back from the potentiometer that's in the rotator and figure out whether it's where it's supposed to be. And if it's not there, it'll keep going. And if it is there, it will stop. So this is a page from the ARRL Arduino book, which shows what the layout of this thing is. Basically, this is an Arduino Uno here. This is an analog to digital converter here. In the book, they say you need an analog to digital converter, even though this thing can take analog inputs, because the author of that article in the book says that this is not definitive enough to be able to read down to the micro degree that you need to for a rotator controller. I kind of doubt that for most of your, HF type antennas, you don't have to be down to a degree. You could be really close enough and you probably could eliminate this thing and go to an analog input into the Arduino. And then this is just a bunch of digital outputs. These are 5-volt inputs and outputs, and these are transistors that they're using for switches. And this is going down to the actual input on the back of the rotator box, telling it which buttons to push, clockwise, counterclockwise, up, down, stuff like that. The design that I did, I replaced these things with relays for reasons that I'll tell you in a couple of minutes. Okay, but the design in the ARRL book uses transistors. So here's an application that we came up with. This is a switch for the satellite antennas. These are actually the old satellite antennas, not the new satellite antennas. So most of the satellites work on one of two modes. They go up on 70 centimeters, they come down on 2 meters, or they go up on 2 meters and come down on 70 centimeters. So if you think about it, you've got a receiver, which is an SDR radio. You've got a transmitter, which is the 847. And sometimes the 2-meter antenna has got to be connected to the SDR radio, and sometimes it's got to be connected to the 847, depending on whether you're transmitting or receiving on 2 meters. And sometimes it's the other way around. Okay. So you need something that's going to switch these antennas depending on the mode of the satellite. And we initially, and this is the way it is down at the clubhouse now, by the way, because we haven't built everything back up again. We had 2 big type N antenna switches, where one switches the 70 centimeter antenna, the other one switches the 2-meter antenna between the transmitter and the receiver. And they both got to be set right. And the problem we got into is that WB2MNFs kept screwing it up. You wouldn't change the things and you'd be transmitting on the wrong antenna, or God help us, you'd be transmitting on no antenna. Something like that. So what we wanted to be able to do was the CAT controller, okay, the satellite, the program that runs on the computer that tells the 847 what frequency to set to. It does that through CAT control, okay? So it's a serial input. We wanted to sniff that line and find out what frequency that transmitter was set to, and then use that logic to automatically switch the antennas. Okay, so if we're transmitting on 440 dot so-and-so, that means we're transmitting on 70 centimeters, which means we're receiving on 2 meters, which means the antennas need to be switched that way. And if it's we're transmitting on 144, that means the antennas need to be switched that way. Okay, and that smarts is all built into the CAT controller and the radio. And we basically put a physical Y connector on that cable going into the back of the 847. Okay, it's a DB9 connector going back into the 847, coming out of a USB with a DB9 connector on it. And we put a Y connector on that cable. So now, in addition to feeding data from the satellite program into the 847, it's also feeding it into one of those serial ports on the Arduino. Okay, one of those things I just showed you on the top of that Mega. That's why we wanted them there. So we replaced the manual switches with 2 12-volt N connector relays, $100 a piece. We're using the digital pins to power the 12-volt relays to switch those things. Okay, so we're basically using a digital output on the Arduino to apply power to that antenna relay based on the logic of the program. We have 3 buttons that I'll show you what it looks like now on that control what the switcher is supposed to be doing. So we read them and we light LEDs to tell it what how the thing is set up. And we're using the COM input from the 847. That's that Y cable coming in there. So now the Arduino knows what frequency the 847 is set to and can apply logic to switch it. I wrote the code initially. Jeff Welsh cleaned it up because I'm not as good a programmer as he is. So there's a couple of buttons on the switch on the box. Again, once you're doing this in software, you can make it do anything. So for example, there's one button that says connect both antennas to the receiver. Okay, and that means we're not transmitting. We're just listening. We want both antennas on the receiver and we don't care. Okay, so if we put that button, it basically defeats all the other logic. There's one button that says switch the mode. So if it was in mode UV, 2 meters up, 470 centimeters down, it switches to the other. And then it switches back. And you could basically manually switch the mode. And then there's another button that says use CAT. Okay, and in that case, the software, the satellite software is controlling the relays. Okay, right now we've got a little bit of a bug there in that once it gets into CAT mode, it won't get out of CAT mode. And the reason I think is because it's sitting there waiting for input from CAT. And if there's no input, it just sits there and waits for it, which means we got to write an interrupt driven driver there. And I haven't gotten around to doing that yet. So this is what the original box looked like. This is what something looks like when I build it. Okay. This is what it looks like when Frank builds it. Okay. Okay. This is a perfectly printed 3D printed box. The interior of this thing looks just as nice as the exterior of it. We added an LCD display on it. Okay. And the 3 buttons there are controlling it. So that's it for those projects. There's a couple of things I want to show you that you can add to an Arduino, which really increases its capability. So for example, and they're called shields, okay, and they plug into the top of the Arduino. I should have brought one, but basically you saw all those pin things coming out of the top of the Arduino. These pins go into that. So it plugs in right on top of it. So this is an Ethernet shield. Now, it already does that. It already does that. I don't remember how, but what I think it does is we had to add another input that would set it in simplex mode. And then what you need is push to talk. You have to, because you're now dealing with switching a transmitter and a receiver from the same antenna, which is the way most of your HF rigs work, right? You're switching back and forth there. But that functionality wasn't there because we never were transmitting and receiving on the same antenna. We're always transmitting and receiving on different antennas. But in half duplex, as you point out, we're working on the same thing. That's basically what happens when we're working the digipeater on the ISS. So there we had to run another cable in from the computer, because the sound modem program that generates the packets for the APRS stuff has a push to talk output, and you can define a COM port for that. So we grabbed that through a USB to TTL converter, plugged it into another serial input on the board. And when that's happening, then we can switch the antenna back and forth the way you normally would for half duplex operation. And that's what we'd have to do for GreenCube, by the way, since that's also half duplex. So thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, that was something else we had to add. So there's a bunch of these different shields that you can add. There's a Wi-Fi shield. So if you wanted the Arduino to be able to talk Wi-Fi, keep in mind, these things can't talk natively to anything. They can only talk out that one USB port. Okay, it's not like a Raspberry Pi where you've got an Ethernet connector and you've got Wi-Fi and all that kind of stuff. If you want it to be able to talk, you've got to add this stuff. So you plug one of these things on the top and it could talk Wi-Fi. If you wanted to control the motor with it, there's a shield to control a motor. This is one we use a lot. This is a 4 relay shield. And you plug this thing on top, and now you can say, when I tell it to, take pin 5 and turn it on, it will switch one of these relays. Okay, and now I can control a rotator with it, or I can control a motor with it, or I can control something that pulls a lot of current with it. And this is what I use instead of the transistors, just because it plugs in on top and I don't have to solder anything because I'm such a lousy solderer. There's also a function, a set of connectors called Grove connectors, which allow you to connect a bunch of these different devices together. And it's a Molex plug that looks like this, and it has a standard configuration. And so you can plug this, and I'll show you in a minute how you use these things. So you could have a Grove connector for an LED that would plug in like that. Or you could have a Grove connector for an analog device. And the connectors on this thing, you can see it on this one. There's a ground, there's power, and there's 2 signal inputs on this thing. Okay, so this might go to plus 5 volts. This would go to ground, and this would go to an analog input on the Arduino. And whatever this is coming in, say this is measuring voltage or something, this would output digitally what the voltage is. So this is the kind of thing you would use this way. And this connector simply lets you connect with a cable and a Molex connector in a secure way, where otherwise you'd have to use the little pin connectors that go into the little holes on the top of the Arduino, and they fall out like crazy, and they're hard to deal with. So I use these things for everything. So that's how kind of they connect. So here's the pin connectors that would go on here, and they would go to a Grove cable. So I would use a Grove cable whenever I could. And then there's a header you could stick on. This is another shield that you stick onto the Arduino, where everything is shown in Grove connectors. So instead of having all these little pin connectors like I showed you before, you can use a Molex connector that you stick in there, and you stick it into the other thing you're connecting to, and it's not going to fall out. And it's always going to be right. So that was kind of a great learn for me to figure out that stuff. Yeah, and I'll show you an example of that. So here's an example. I don't know whether this is mine or this is somebody else's, but I was building out an oxygen, a setup with an oxygen sensor for measuring oxygen content for scuba diving. So there's basically an oxygen sensor going into an Arduino Mega. There's an air quality sensor. You can buy all these sensors and all these little things. They probably cost about 35 or 40 cents. And you just plug them in and write code to read them. There's a motor driver. There's a 6-axis accelerator and gyroscope. We were thinking about using them to on the satellite antennas to tell where they're aimed. Okay, you could do something like that if you figured that out. There's a multiplexer. This is a controller that I built for. We wanted to try and explore the use of solar power down there at the clubhouse. So this is a West Mountain Radio solar controller. Solar goes in. This I think is a battery. This is power supply. This is load. And these are individual current voltage sensors. So this might be connected up to the solar panels and tell us what the solar panel voltage and current was. Where's another one? This one would be connected to the load and tell us what the load voltage and current was. This would be battery, and this would be, what am I missing? Something else. So these are connected into the Arduino here, and it's measuring all of this stuff. And then we wanted to be able to output this onto a dashboard so we could record it and we could get to it from a computer. Well, you can't do that with Arduino, but you can do it with a Raspberry Pi. So these wires here are connecting the serial port output on the Arduino to the serial port input of the Pi. Okay, so we're using this to do the measuring and this to do the controlling. And these relays here were basically part of the logic in the Raspberry Pi that said, if the sun is down, disconnect the power supply and run off the battery until the battery runs down, and then connect the power supply. And what we're hoping to see, and we were able to see this most of the time, is the battery never runs down because the sun comes up before it does. Okay, and that's what we wanted to see. We wanted to see whether we could make this thing autonomous. Okay, and only use the power supply if we had like 2 or 3 days of shade. And in fact, that worked. But it worked because we were using the Arduino to do all the sensing and the Pi to do the smart work. And you see this relay shield up here. This was turning the power supply on and off. So this device, when the sun went down, it would automatically use the power supply. We didn't want that. We wanted to use the battery until the battery's down. Okay, so we wanted to circumvent the logic of this by using this. Okay, so there's an application there. 10 after 9. I can cut this short. One of the really interesting apps, this is what I was talking about, is after we'd written the rotator controller program, Frank said, K3NG's already done that. Okay, why don't you go use his code? And so I started working on that. Al, you were asking about stacking these things. I have a batch, actually the next picture is better. Yeah, this stuff I made up today, so it's probably not as clean as I'd like. So this is an Arduino Mega. This is a pin extender, which I didn't realize existed until I ran across it. It basically pushes, gives us more space here, because otherwise the pins on this relay were sitting on top of this USB connector here, and they're going to short them out. All right, so I got these extenders, so it pushed that up. So this is a relay board. So this is where our logic is going to be. This is the relay board that's going to control the antenna controllers. Okay, and I need 2 relays there, right? I need 4 relays there. I need clockwise, I need counterclockwise, I need up, and I need down. And there's 4 relays on that board. And then this is an Ethernet hat. Okay, because the idea of this thing is you want to be able to remotely control this thing. The idea of this thing is this thing can sit over in the corner of the VHF room with the rotator controller there, and we're going to control it over the network from the satellite computer or from any other computer we choose to control it from. In other words, we want to have a ubiquitous rotator controller that can be controlled by any device and not necessarily just be hardwired to the satellite computer. And that's Ethernet hat's going to let us do that. Okay. This is really in the infancy of it. I've just basically got this thing wired together, and then I got involved with other stuff. So this is the back end of it, and you can kind of see the stacking. This is all the digital inputs on the Mega, and this part is not covered. And then this is there's your stacker, and there's your relay board, and the relays are kind of on the other side of it. And then this is the Ethernet hat here. And I hope you can read this, but this is the beauty of the K3NG code, is it's extremely, extremely customizable. So you'll see all of the, there's whole sections of code that have these define statements in it. So basically define rotate CW as 6. So pin 6 is going to tell the program is going to tell pin 6, it's going to turn that high. It's going to put 5 volts on that pin when you want to rotate clockwise. And I can change that. If the board that I plugged into it isn't on pin 6, I could change it to pin 8 if the relay's connected in there. So I can define all of this kind of stuff in the parameters of the program. Here's another example of it. I can define what type of rotator I'm using. So basically the slashes here are comments. This is not commented. So basically, this is basically saying I'm talking to a Yaesu rotator. Okay. But if I uncommented this, it's a different rotator. And here I can say, geez, I want to include moon tracking. and it'll include that code when it compiles it. And then here I want to use a GPS and all that kind of stuff. So all of this stuff is actually built into the program. It's configurable through a configuration menu, and you don't have to write all that code yourself. This is a schematic that I got. It's kind of similar to the other one, but basically, and this is using a nano. This is using the 4 for $20 nanos, 7 volts going in. They're using, they're using buttons to change to move it. And then they're using transistors for switching, and there's clockwise, counterclockwise, and brake. So that obviously would be an azimuth only rotator. And this is a little bit more complicated. You can see they've got buttons for input and output. So they want to be able to use the controller to turn the antennas as opposed to having to use a rotator box to turn the antennas, which you might or might not want to do depending on whether they're located next to each other. And then here you've got 4 relays, okay, because you're doing azimuth elevation. So you got to go counterclockwise, clockwise, up and down. So this is an as-L option. And this one's also got an LCD display on it. So it's showing you how to connect the LCD. So this is basically the schematic of how you'd hook up the different pins on your Arduino to the different leads coming out. And again, these pin numbers were defined in those define statements I just showed you. Okay, so you would make sure that the define statements matched up with your pinouts there. No, it's an Arduino. That's all Arduino code. Yeah, this thing's running on, I've got it running on a Mega, but it looks like slides back when I had something running on a Nano, it looks like it may run on a Nano. So this is somebody else's picture of an Arduino rotator controller. So you can see a nice design here. You've got your Arduino. This is an Uno here connecting together with a relay board here, connecting together probably with some lights here and going out the back end to a cable. So that's how you would actually build one of these things if you were a really good builder and not me. And that's it. So, not too bad. Questions? Yeah.
Down with it.
Yeah, it's basically +5 or 0. Yeah. So you could light an LED with it. You want to pull down resistor, and you can define any of those those digitals as input or output. So, it can be a push button input, or it could be a light an LED, or it could be throw a relay or turn a motor on, or do something like that. I guess so. Yeah.
What's the first one?
Transistor to transistor logic.
Subset of the pins have it's very stacks. So you can do 0 to 5 volts and 4,006 stacks. Is that up on GitHub?
Yeah, K3NG is on GitHub.
Look at that. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah. And if any of you guys are interested in building one of these things, let me know, because I can certainly use some help with this. Any of you guys if there's anybody left on Zoom too, let me know. Anything else? All right. Thanks for coming out. We'll see you next month.